On this very day, 2 years ago, for all Ukrainians, life was divided into before and after. Since the beginning of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, Ukrainian employers and workers have faced unprecedented challenges, with their livelihoods gravely threatened. The war has disrupted industries, leaving factories abandoned, farms neglected, and infrastructure in ruins. Millions of workers and their families have been forced to flee their homes, leaving behind jobs and economic stability. Still, the threat of shelling looms over their heads as they navigate their way to work. The ILO extended its unwavering support to the government, employers, and workers of Ukraine. In the first weeks and months of the aggression, with ILO humanitarian aid, the Ukrainian employers supported directly 25,000 people in need. The trade unions organized more than 17,000 bed nights with meals in recreational centers. The Labor Inspectorate covered 1.2 million Ukrainians with awareness-raising campaign on forced labor. As the war continued, the ILO has been there for its tripartite constituents, supporting the recovery and reform effort with robust labor market data, policy advice, normative work, and help to build resilience of labor market institutions and affected communities by offering training, grant support, and a rich knowledge base.
As the war enters its third year, now is the time to act on recovery and development. The ILO and the Ukrainian government have agreed on a strategy to set the country on a path to decent work by investing in people, creating quality employment and sustainable enterprises, and improving labor market governance. Together with our Ukrainian counterparts, we will support the employment of people with disabilities, war veterans, and forcibly displaced Ukrainians, promote the integration of women in the labor force, stamp out labor exploitation and informality, and promote fundamental principles and rights at work in the physical reconstruction of Ukraine. We will also support national efforts to reform the labor legislation in line with the EU accession requirements, and strengthen the system of social dialogue and the capacities of workers and employers' organizations to participate. The newly established office in Kyiv will provide the necessary and timely on-site support in cooperation with the UN and development partners. Now is the moment to help get Ukraine on a path to achieving its aspirations by shaping the engine of a skilled, inclusive, and regulated labor market.